Hey guys, today I'm talking about a weed killer that works incredibly well. It beats all of the chemical weed killers. It's perfectly safe, and I've used it this summer and it's done quite well for me. As you can see, I have a lot of gravel in my yard. I have a lot of gravel pathways in the entire vegetable garden. The walkways are gravel, and there's always weed seeds flying in from other areas and growing weeds in between my vegetable garden. So this weed killer will work for you. It is incredibly inexpensive, and I'm going to show you. There's three variations I've found. I've looked around and I've found three different products that you can use in here, and it works great. So I'll show you an up-close image of what it looks like. Now this is a close-up of the product I use in the weed killer, and it works incredibly well, like I said, and it's incredibly cheap. You would be amazed at what 40 pounds of this cost, only a few dollars, and it works alone, or you can add a couple of additives to the formula, which will make it work even better. So let's head into the greenhouse and I'll show you exactly how to use it and how to put it together. So this do-it-yourself weed killer is really just a three-component system, and I've never used this exact formulation. I've done other weed killer do-it-yourself videos in the past, and I've used everything you can imagine. I actually have an upcoming video that's going to show 13 different methods to killing weeds in your yard. Some of them more permanent than others, but I'll put that video up in the next day or two, or a few days from now. But this weed killer is the basic component is one of these three right here. This is three different forms of the same product, and I'm going to show you two additives to add to it that will make it work perfectly in your yard. Now this is a long-term weed killer, so if you're wanting to plant something in there, you're going to have to wait a season until it gets completely out of the soil, because it works really good for pathways and areas where you want no weeds. Now the primary weed killer in this formula is just ordinary salt, but it's not ordinary salt that you find in your kitchen. This salt is specifically sold at hardware stores and places like that, and it's sold in very large containers. Each one of these containers contains salt, but in three different sizes, and that's what makes it work really well. Now the first one I'm going to show you is this one right here, and I'll give you a close-up, and I'm going to explain to you why you have to buy a very specific product unless you want to go through some added steps. So I'm just trying to make it easiest for you as possible, because the other two, the first two bags, yes, you can use these two, but there's some added steps that you'll have to go through to make it where it's going to work at its maximum best. Now the first type of salt we're looking at here is for water softeners. These first two bags are actually made for water softening, and that's to take the minerals. If you have a very hard water, it helps with that, and that's what a water softener does. But it looks like gravel. It's almost the size of the gravel I have outside. It looks like crushed marble actually. But this is the first bag. Now what you do, the first step you're going to do is you're going to put it in water and allow that water to absorb and soften up the salt. But there's a second step you're going to have to do, and I'm going to show you up on my desk here what you have to do with this. There's two ways to reduce the size of these. If you can't get access to the second or third bag, and this is all you can find, the pelletized size, then let me show you what to do next. Now before I discovered the second type of salt, the second and third type, I used this pelletized size, and you can see it's really large. And what I did is initially I just took an old pillowcase or a laundry bag and put what I needed in there and just crushed it down with some hammers and things like that, where you can get it to the smallest size. Also, I used this concrete mixing bit that you hook up to a drill, and it worked really well at breaking it down. Once it had been in there for about 5 or 6 days, it was a lot softer. So I'll put a link to one of these in the description. You can find these at most hardware stores, but if you can't, look in the description and I'll put one in there so you can order it. So you can break the salt down before you put it into the water and add the second and third ingredient. So just remember, if that's the one that you've gotten purchased, it's the large pelletized size, break it down into the smallest size, because it's going to take maybe up to 30 to 40 days for this to completely dissolve in your water. Now once again, this is the same product. It's just a little bit slightly manufactured, a little bit different, and they're both actually made by the same company. But this particular pelletized, this is not pelletized, this is crystallized salt. It's a little bit smaller. It's almost transparent, especially when you put it in water. This has been in water for about 2 days, and I've noticed it's starting to break down a little bit. The sizes are a little bit smaller, so it will dissolve over time. And you can take the concrete bit, and just take it and stir it around. You might want to transfer it to a larger bucket size, and I'll tell you about the formulation, the exact formulation, a little bit later. But again, this is already starting to break down, get a little bit smaller, and the same thing. That's your main ingredient in this weed killer formula is one of these two, but the third one is my favorite, and I'll show exactly how to do that, and then we'll mix that up. And I'm going to do a demonstration and wait 24 hours and show you exactly how well this works. Now, as I said earlier, these are made for water softeners, but this one is designed for pool chlorinators, specifically salt chlorinators, and the size is basically like table salt. It's very small, but the price on this is really good. It's like, I believe I paid under $8 for this, and it's really good deal. If you look around, you might be able to get it for under $7 or even under $6. But this is what I'm going to mix up today and demonstrate how well it works with two other ingredients. But pool salt is what I would recommend. If you can't get pool salt, then this is fine. There's no problem with the water softening salt, but you're going to have to go to the extra added steps of reducing the size down so the water will be fully concentrated as much as possible in your water when you apply it. Now, the per gallon amount is, I've been using about 1/2 a cup to a gallon of this, and it works really well, even on the toughest weeds. So the first ingredient is our pool salt, 1/2 a cup per gallon. You can experiment. You might go to 1/4 cup, but I think 1/2 a cup for me has been the optimum amount. But the second ingredient is going to be vinegar, but not just ordinary vinegar. There's two types of vinegar I have around the greenhouse. This one is a 45% concentrate, and I recently bought this one right here that's 75%. Now, this is very toxic. When you're using it, you probably want to wear a face mask, eye protection. I can't do that because you can't hear me talking with a face mask, and my glasses do help me, and I'm very careful in pouring it. So you don't want to splash this in your eyes. These are very toxic. So just remember, face mask, eye protection. That's the second ingredient. I would say about 1/4 cup, and even this may be even less because it's not an absolute necessity, but for some of the tougher weeds, I like to have something to help boost the salt treatment. So I use just maybe 1/4 cup or even less, just a few ounces of this. And on this, I use about, I think I said half a cup. This is 45%. This is 75%. I'll put a link to both of these in the description. They're a little bit harder to find. You can find them at some hardware stores, some grocery stores carry it, but it's kind of rare. It's more of I think it's more of a cleaning product, you might say. But these two, like I say, are a little bit harder to find, but I'll put links to both of them in the description. Now, the third ingredient I'm using is soap. And the reason we're using soap is we want this formulation to stick to the leaves of the weeds. You can use baby shampoo. You can use something like this that's supposed to be a free and clear made by Dawn. I'm not sure how perfectly safe it is, but I think it is a lot better than the Blue Dawn, which is probably a little bit more toxic. But if you want to go with the safest soap you can possibly find, use Castile soap. I'll put a link to one of those in the description. But that would be the purest way. But you are going to do a little bit of damage to the soil because salt in soil does kill microbes and bacteria and things like that. But if you have a gravel pathway like I do, or you have areas where you have nothing growing and you don't want weeds, you just want something like a mulch, a pine straw, whatever, then you're going to spray those areas with this. Remember, you'll have to wait till next year to plant anything in these areas because it will completely wipe out whatever you've got growing. And this salt has to leach out of the soil. So it is toxic to the microbial life that's in the soil, the bacteria and things like that. It does a great job on getting rid of weeds, and I have probably close to 1 mile of gravel pathways, and it is just absolutely impossible without some type of weed killing product. Now, try to avoid the Roundup. I think this works better than Roundup, and it's a heck of a lot cheaper than Roundup. Now, before I mix it up, I want to talk just a minute about whatever you're using. If you use something like this, you use a watering can, you want to do the triple rinsing rule, whether you're using a handheld sprayer, a mechanical sprayer, a powered sprayer, or just an ordinary watering can like this. Triple rinse to make sure you get all the salt out of it. The reason you want to get a salt out of something like this is because if you accidentally water something in your garden, like your flowers, your vegetables, that salt's going to kill it. So it's going to do a number on that. For using, the same reason goes for this. You don't want it to later on use it for some type of fertilizer and you end up killing some of your plants, vegetables, whatever. But the second reason when it comes to sprayers like this, if there's any metal parts in here, the salt is going to rust it, corrode it, and do a lot of damage. I have a very expensive backpack sprayer that's a 20-volt powered. I'll put a link to one of those in the description. It's my favorite sprayer, but I always make sure I triple rinse it anytime there's salt in it because there is mechanical metal parts in there and I don't want to do a lot of damage to it. Today I'm just going to mix it up in this one and I'm going to take it out to an area where I have some weeds growing. I'm going to spray very heavily in that one spot, mark it, and then we'll do a follow-up in 24 hours. Now, there's no concrete rules on the exact mixture. Sometimes I'll do it a little bit less. If it's some minor weeds, if it's poison ivy or something that's really tough to get rid of, I'll mix it stronger. Today, I'm mixing about roughly 1 cup to 1 gallon. And then we're going to put in the 75% vinegar. Now, you don't have to put a lot of this, and this is really optional. I think it boosts it quite a bit more, but we're going to do this if I can get the top off here. And I'm just going to put probably 3 or 4 ounces in there, and just be very careful, because again, if this gets in your eyes or you breathe in anything, I can't help it right now. I can't wear a mask or you won't be able to hear a word I'm saying, but I'd say maybe 3 or 4 ounces. Okay, the last thing we're putting in here is I am going to use the Blue Dawn, because we can see it when it's being sprayed exactly where it was sprayed at. I'd say about 3 or 4 ounces of this. Then we're going to mix it with our paint stick. And we're going to take this out to the weeded area where I'm growing some weeds, just to show you how well this works. Again, there's an upcoming video about 12 or 13 different products or do-it-yourself products you can use for weed killing. So I'm going to mix this up. We'll take it out. I'll show you exactly where I'm going to spray, and then we'll come back in 24 hours and show you the results just 24 hours later. Now, we had been getting a lot of rain. I had to wait until we had a day where it's clear. You want to do this when it's hot and dry. That's when it will work best. Now, there is some salt still in the bottom, but it mostly dissolved. That entire cup is now down to just maybe 2 ounces. So really the best way to do this is stir it and let it sit for a little while until it's completely dissolved. But for the video purposes, I didn't have a lot of time to allow it to completely dissolve. But as you can see, maybe there's just an ounce or 2 left in there. Now, as you can see, I wasn't kidding when I said I had a lot of pathways and I have a lot of weeds to take care of in the summer. This process, I usually have to do the entire gravel pathway at least twice a summer, sometimes 3 if the rain is quite heavy. But I've got a marker here. I'm going to mark in this weed area exactly where we spray, and then in 24 hours, I'll show you the results. These weeds are actually growing here for a very specific purpose. I use these weeds to make fertilizer. I'll link a video up above that shows you how to turn weeds into a very rich fertilizer. Now, these weeds are a little bit over 1 foot tall, and I have them growing here in the center section very specifically just for the weed demonstration. So I'm just going to put this here. I'm going to do a 3 or 4 foot area all the way around it. We'll come back and look at it later. But again, I'm going to do many different formulations to show you how well a homemade weed killer can work and how cheap it is. But this is absolutely one of the cheapest ones, because you can get a 40-pound bag and you can use it, mix it up, and it will have a shelf-stable life of years, because the salt, you'll just have to pick it up, stir it up again, and then you can apply it back. But let's spray this weeded area. I'm going to go about 3 or 4 foot in here, and then I'm going to show you some other areas that I previously did and how close you can get the grass without damaging it. Now, you're probably wondering, why don't I just plant grass in this area and let it grow really nicely? Well, the problem with this piece of property is this one particular section has a very high water table. And in the winter time, in the spring, and sometimes in the fall, the water table rises and you can't even hardly walk in this area. It's just a boggy, marshy. That explains the cattails growing so close to my path, is their water table is probably right now, even in the middle of summer, only a few feet below the ground. So this area really is a nuisance area for me, but I've turned it into a positive thing by using the weeds as fertilizer, and also I can demonstrate this weed killing video. But preferably in this area, I wish that it was all cattails, but unfortunately I've got hundreds of cattails over there, but not enough to cover the entire area. So I've turned this into a harvest area for my weeds that I turn into that weed fertilizer I talked about earlier. Take a look at it in the video. You'll understand what I'm talking about. Let me show you a couple other places where I actually have sprayed this very close to the grass. It did no damage to the grass, but it did kill it. If you're very careful and you have the sprayer adjusted just right, you can cut just a very narrow path close to edging or things like that, where you don't have to worry about killing your grass, but you can eliminate weeds and you won't have to use a weed eater. Now, this metal edging, I have hundreds of feet of it. I purchased it before the price on it went through the roof. So this is probably 20-year-old metal edging, and it's holding up quite well. I think it was painted with an oil-based paint, and it's lasted for quite a while. But anyways, if you look closely, right next to the edge, you can see there's no weeds growing there. Normally, I have to get out my weed eater and go all the way around. But if you carefully spray, as I did, with a fine pin stream right up against it, you can kill about a 1-inch wide barrier all the way around your yard where you have edging, and it eliminates that process. So it makes it a little bit easier. Now the sun is setting, so tomorrow about this time, about sunset, we're going to take a look at that area I just sprayed and show you how well this works. I only used maybe, I'm guessing, about 4 to 5 liquid ounces through the sprayer on that area. So you'll be able to get an idea of how truly cheap this is. We're talking about pennies per gallon when you figure you can use it, put it on a shelf and use it the next year. It will last for quite a long while. So keep watching, and for me 24 hours will pass, but for you just a few seconds. I'll show you the results. So guys, we're just shy of 24 hours later, and as you can see, this area that I sprayed, it's about 5 foot by 5 foot, is all started dying, wilting, and some of it is already dead. So it works extremely well on weeds. Everything to my right is still growing healthy, and in the one little section I sprayed yesterday with just a few ounces of our formula, it's working really great. So I might put up a YouTube short in about a week showing you the result, because this will die back all the way to the ground, and as the sun hits it every day, it'll wither and die, and no more weeds will grow in this one spot, possibly for the rest of the summer, because it's now with the salt in the ground area, it might prevent any new weeds from growing. So we'll see how that works, and I'll see if I have time to put up a YouTube short, maybe once or twice more, showing this little spot. So guys, I really appreciate you watching, and I hope you got something out of it. I hope you'll like and subscribe and give me a thumbs up, because that really helps the channel. Have a great day.